Welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio. And on the show this week, you will learn how to get your spark back if you feel you've lost your joie de vivre.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Well, hello everybody, and I am delighted to say that we are definitely having a great show today because for the first time in a long while, I have a guest to introduce to you. And this is somebody who I met quite a long time ago professionally, but who is a person who life hasn't always dealt the easy cards to. And I'll let her tell you a little bit more about the detail herself. But welcome to the show, Rachel Marie Martin. Hello there.
Hello. I'm super excited to be here.
Now, I think you should tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your backstory.
All right. So that's always interesting to me because I never know where I'm going to start with it. But first of all, I always tell people I'm kind of an early adopter of anything computers and technology. So we'll just start there. Like I learned to code in the 1980s. I don't even know if you knew that about me, but my dad bought a home computer and then was like, hey, here's a book on how to code. And then I'd get home and I would do all this coding. And then I'd be like, hey, look, there's a ball bouncing across the screen. I thought it was awesome. But because of that, I just love technology. And when I was in college in 1995, one of the internet came more profound. And one of the professors was like, hey, you need to get email. I'm like, what's email? And I got my own email. And just from that point, just loved that world and was in Yahoo groups and then started a blog. But during that process of writing online and doing all that, I went through my own journey of financial hardship, a really challenging first marriage where I ended up, was married for quite a while, had many children, ended up going through a really challenging divorce, and then was a single mom. And during that time, built my business, built this entrepreneurial lifestyle, which is when you and I met. And from that point on, it just kept growing, and I've published 3 books and gotten remarried. And now I have a very busy blended household, and I'm still an entrepreneur in this wonderful world of the internet.
So the thing that Rachel and I particularly bonded over is the fact that we are both often a little bit too early on these new things. You know, I vividly remember the first time my friend Viola Rollins gave me her business card and it had an AOL email address on it. And it was like a long string of numbers. I was like, I can't use this. And then my friend Anna said to me, Anna Van Limputen, if you're out there, or Limputen, sorry, I should say it correctly. She said to me, you have an unusual surname. You should buy your domain. So I bought .com back in probably about 96, 97 sort of time, and never regretted that. And it is fun being early, but I have a catchphrase, which is, the overnight success takes about 8 years.
That's true. I like that because I think it's Lionel Messi that said he was an overnight success in 17 years or something like that. So, I mean, I like it because it is this diligent and then trying things. Like you said, I'm really grateful for the domains that I have, and lament the domains that I lost, because in the process of my divorce, my actual rachelmariemartin.com was lost to me, and now it's parked for a very large amount. So I just wave at it.
It may come back. I had a client yesterday tell me that they got offered a sensible price for their Australian domain very recently. And yeah, so it's not impossible.
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Nothing, I like that. Nothing's impossible. And you know what, you can make it work. I about a decade ago, or maybe even longer than that, when I chose the name Finding Joy, I couldn't get findingjoy.com because there's an Australian film with that has that domain. And so I had .net, and it felt like, oh, Like people are like, can you survive it? And now nobody cares because you just find it.
There are so many domains.
Right.
The book, Get Your Spark Back, with a very,
Yeah.
very lovely note that Rachel
Thank
sent
you.
me with it. The journey of life has complexities. And although I jokingly complain quite often, like, no one told me it was going to be like this, you have a particular reason why you wrote this book. Now, I'm guessing if you got your spark back, you must have lost your spark. Can you tell us how that happened and what made you realize that you weren't, as happy and cheerful and generous of spirit as you are, why it wasn't quite sitting right with you?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the spark, that concept, the spark to me is I really believe we all have it within us and it ebbs and flows as life goes by. It comes and it goes. And I had gotten to a place where it was after my divorce, it was after my single mom years, I was remarried, and it was at the height of the pandemic, really, when so many of us had these moments to contemplate. And I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say, I recognize the face looking back. I recognize all the accomplishments, but I don't know me. And that part of it really scared me. It actually was this very uneasy part of myself. And so I went on this journey without realizing what I was doing in the start of figuring out my own self. I call it my soul. And I gave the illusion in the beginning of the book, the illustration, that I felt like I was in the crowdest, densest forest and it was so foggy. And I didn't know, I had no map anymore. I couldn't see the stars. And the whole journey of getting your spark back really was me not just sitting there looking, wondering where the stars were, but figuring out how to progress forward, how to keep stepping forward, how to go about figuring out my own soul's journey in the midst of life. And that's what this book was about. It started, there's a lot of I'm a runner, so there's a lot of running analogies in it, a lot of my own journey of what it took to push past uncomfortable and to start to listen to my own soul again.
Whoa, there's a lot to unpack in there.
You know
So
me.
you had quite a few kind of clues. And
Mhm.
did it frighten you when you had that moment looking in the mirror?
Um, yes, a little bit. It frightened me in the way that I knew time was still moving. Is when you're young, I feel like you think, well, I have all the time in the world to do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. Like, I'll just do that in the next decade. And it frightened me because I looked at my parents and I looked at some of the health stuff that my parents have, or I looked at relatives, or I even dealt with friends that had lost their loved ones. And I thought, you know what? Time is finite. And the way that it frightened me was I can't keep waiting until the next decade to do these things. If I want to run the marathon, I am going to have to train for the marathon now because I don't have the luxury of thinking I'll run for a marathon in 20 or 30 years because then I'm just taking for granted that time. So it was more like an awakening versus the frightening part.
There's a part reasonably early on in the book that really resonated with me as a coach of masters athletes, and I'm going to read a little bit of it just now. So the book is called Get Your Spark Back. This is page 79. Choose to set your bar in the present, not based off the past. This means challenging your bar instead of simply accepting it as the limit. For example, if you were told in 7th grade you were a terrible singer and you've allowed that to be your truth in your 40s, this limit is based on the past. What if you're the greatest singer in the world and the past words were meant to keep you small? Do you want to live your entire life based on the truth from your 13-year-old self? Asking, why do I believe this to be true, is the best antidote to beliefs rooted in the past.
Mhm.
Why do we believe things to be true and then hold on to those beliefs long after we should have challenged them?
So for me, so many of the beliefs that I would have been based off of stuff in the past, and I don't believe that we are taught to challenge those beliefs. Like when I grew up, it was do as I say, or whatever. It was you just did. You just push forward. You plowed forward, and there wasn't that introspection of, well, why am I doing this? And when I got into my 40s, all of a sudden I started having these moments of like, why am I doing this? And I told in the book a story about this woman that it was just a like one of those tales that you hear from mothers that she was making a ham for Easter and she was getting it ready. And her daughter asked her, well, why did you cut off the ends off the ham? And she's like, well, I don't know. That's what grandma did. So she calls her mom and her mother was like, well, I don't know. My mother did that. Let's call her. And she calls her and then her mother starts laughing and says, well, we did that because the ham was too big to fit in the pan. And
Oh no.
it's such a good analogy. It's such a good, like, we just thought, like, there's a reason we're doing it, and the reason wasn't even applicable to the present. And once I heard that story, I thought, how many things do I do that are not applicable? So I started asking myself that question, and how many things do I do that keep me small? Because that was the other part of my journey was I was frustrated because I felt like I was under the radar. I was in a box. I was small and I was looking at everybody else. It's them. It's that situation. And really I needed to look at my own story. Like, you know what? I was keeping, the bar if you're a jumper or something, and you have to jump pole vault over it. I was the one keeping it lower than it should have been.
Now, limiting beliefs is a phrase that I spend a little bit of time on. And as a coach, I see these limiting beliefs all the time in the athletes who come to learn rowing, to improve their rowing. And I hear it in their rowing frustrations. And it's not necessarily that they're like, a 10-year-old go, I can't. It's
Right.
the fact that their mindset won't let them believe that it's possible. And, who goes a day without a rationalization? That was one of the best quotes from the film The Big Chill, which, if anyone's never watched it, it was one of my favorite movies. But how can we as midlife people change our limits and our limiting beliefs?
I really believe the first thing you have to do is to be willing to wonder about your beliefs. It's going back to that childlike sense of wondering, why am I thinking this about myself? Why am I so immediate to tell myself that's not within my scope of doing? That's not within my realm of possibility. And
Mhm.
we're taught, again, if you look at the structure of how many of us grown up, we're taught everything has a container. This is the limits. And there's not a lot of like wondering about that limit. And when you start to wonder about it, you also start to pay attention to the words you're saying. Because you, as a coach, I bet you can hear it. But oftentimes, the other person that's saying it, articulating it, it's so fast, it's so strong that you don't even know that you're saying it. And it's the ability to catch yourself in the thought process and go, why do I believe that to be true? And what if I go beyond it? Like I look at my own running journey and it was the idea of what if I start to run? What if I try? And the idea, like maybe that limiting belief, we're just keeping ourselves from something greater. What there's fear, there's not measuring up, there's that chance of I might look foolish or what will
Oh,
other
yeah.
people think, and deciding, like my thing is this is the only shot I have on this planet right now. I don't want to go in halfway.
And definitely adults trying something new,
Mhm.
many of us have that fear of looking foolish. And one of the joys of teaching adults rowing is that they're in a peer group. But
Mhm.
every now and then someone will come up and go, I'm here because my child rows. And one woman said to me, the condition of me taking your class is you do not tell my child. My entire family must never find out until I can do it. And
Ah.
she did that. And then at Christmas time, they bought a rowing boat, which is like a stand-up paddleboard with a rigger strapped on it.
Mhm.
And they went to unpack it, and the kids had a go, and then they came back, and Dad had a go, and then they said, "Come on, you should have a go." And Claire gets on this thing and literally sculls off, and they're all, "Oh my God, she can do it!" And she
I
had
love
kept it
that.
quiet for months.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that camaraderie, the community there that's around her and the that audacity, that risk to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I am going to figure it out. And then the joy of that moment, I am sure when she got in that and just took off.
Absolutely.
Fabulous.
You make a really interesting point about community. So there's another person who is well known to me who uh, went on a little rowing vacation. There are lovely tours you can do in beautiful parts of New Zealand. So just being out in nature, and the people she met there persuaded her
Mhm.
to come row with them. And then they persuaded her to take a one-day camp with them. And then they
Mm.
persuaded her to come race with them. And she had
Mm.
rowed for 5 years, but never really interested in the racing. And that gradual process of the friendship and the community, and you're not alone, and we'll all be doing it with you, and the confidence and the change in her personality that she actually, I think, now believes she's capable, has been
Mhm.
wonderful to watch. But I couldn't lead it. It was the other people in the community who spotted her potential.
Mhm. Yeah, I love well, I think that's the cool part about community is there was one time when my husband Dan and I were taking it was a CrossFit class, so we were lifting really heavy things, and I was incredibly out of my comfort zone because I've played team sports and I've done all of that. So running or CrossFit, when it was a solo sport, it was a lot of one of my limiting beliefs was I could never run because I need other people, I need the team, or I could never do this. And what I ended up discovering in this CrossFit group was while it was a solo sport, while it was just me lifting the bar, but literally, the people that were there to really, really support me. They were there because they believed in each person. And there was one time we were doing these deadlifts and I was happy. I lifted like 130 pounds or something. I thought this is awesome. Like, look at me. And one of the guys there was like, I bet you could do 10 pounds more. And I was like, I don't think I can do 10 pounds more. And he goes, we should just try it. So I tried it and actually it was 120 to 130. And so I did it. And I was like, and then everybody was cheering. They're like, I bet can you do five? Because that was the thing. So I did five. And when I was done, I was like, I would have been really proud of myself at 120, but my
Yeah.
teammates saw she can do 130, and then I did. And that to me is the power of a team.
Now, I'd love to wrap up, Rachel, with you telling us the story of the green shorts.
Okay. So I have this pair of green shorts that I wore when I was right at the end of my divorce and in the single mom years. And they were kind of my benchmark shorts. Like I thought this is the size, quote unquote, and I use it as an analogy that I needed to be. And I was in 2022, I ran 1,000 miles and which, yes, a
Oh,
1,000 miles. And but I would, during the process, I was constantly like, I would run and then I would get home and then I would try on these green shorts and then they didn't fit. And then and instead of being like, wow, you're at 700 miles right now, I would feel really annoyed at myself. I was frustrated because I thought I needed to fit into these green shorts. And then I had the realization that those green shorts from a decade ago don't need to define who I am now. Those green shorts of that person could not be running the 1,000 miles right now. I'm in a different spot. I'm so grateful for that person. But the person that wore them didn't go through all this stuff and overcome. And yet I was trying to use that thing from the past to determine success and happiness now. And so I got to this place of, you know what? I don't need to fit into who I was before to be happy now. And then I used it as a benchmark and I wrote about it. And then all these people are like, oh my gosh, I have these things in my life, whether it's clothing or a memento or an occasion, that I try to put over my success now without realizing I need to just leave it in the past. And that was my green short story.
Well, it's a really powerful one, and I hope you framed them and put them in the downstairs bathroom or something.
I've saved them because I've gone and spoke before. I'm like, here are the green shorts. Here they are.
So what I loved about your book is you're extremely generous with sharing your own story and recognizing that everybody's story will be different from your own, but drawing the principles from it, which made me feel that I could take a look at areas of my own life with, I would hope, a similar degree of honesty and, find my green short equivalent. So Get Your Spark Back book, How to Find Happiness and Reignite Your Life by Rachel Marie Martin. There's a website, getyoursparkbackbook.com. And Rachel, where else can people follow you online?
Well, most people find me on Facebook at Finding Joy blog. You just type it in. My face pops up. There's a blue check mark that Meta said many years ago, she's real, people, she's real. Or you can find me at findingjoy.net. But I've also, and I don't even know if you know this, but I've been writing on Substack right now too, which I love. And I'm Rachel Marie Martin at Substack. So you can find me there.
Well, I look forward to it. And for all of the listeners of Faster Masters Rowing Radio, Rachel, thank you for coming and telling us your story, because midlife is a place and a space where we all need that community. And some of us need to find our guiding stars. We need to see the sky again.
Beautiful. Thank you.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.